The Artaxian hegemony's scout vessel sliced through the darkness, emerging from fold space at the edge of a yellow star system. The ship's sensors immediately began their work, scanning each planet methodically. When they reached the third planet, blue, vibrant, and teeming with life, the computer chimed. Captain Doe rose from his command chair, his gray exoskeleton catching the light as he moved to the main view screen. His mandibles clicked rhythmically, a sign of mild curiosity rather than excitement. "Life signs?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Science Officer Kim stepped forward, her slender form dwarfed by the captain's bulk. Her fingers danced across the control panel, bringing up detailed scans of the blue world. "Oxygen breathers, Captain. Billions of them. They've developed basic technology, internal combustion engines, primitive nuclear power, limited space travel. They call themselves humans." Doe made a dismissive gesture with his upper limbs. "Pre-interstellar species aren't worth diplomatic protocols. Have they detected us?" "No, Captain. Their scanning technology is rudimentary. They've only reached their moon, though they have unmanned probes throughout their system." The captain moved closer to the view screen, studying the planet. The Artaxian hegemony had encountered hundreds of species in their 10,000 years of expansion. Most have been properly subjugated and now serve useful roles in the empire. These humans would be no different. "Their technology is inefficient," Kim continued, "but there's something unusual in their approach. They solve problems in ways our engineers would never consider. It's innovative, if primitive." "Interesting, but irrelevant," Doe replied. "The High Command ordered us to establish an outpost in this system to monitor the Perseus Arm. We'll use their outer planet, the ringed gas giant." Lieutenant Rowe, the tactical officer, spoke up. "Sir, should we initiate first contact procedures? The High Command's directives suggest." "I know the directives," Doe interrupted, "but they also give captains discretion for primitive species. These humans aren't worth the formalities. If they notice us, a simple show of force will establish the natural order. They'll understand their place quickly enough." The Artaxian vessel moved deeper into the system, passing the outer planets without slowing. Their sensors detected a small human research station orbiting the ringed planet. It was little more than a habitat module with solar arrays and communication dishes. From the station, a signal transmitted toward the alien ship. It repeated in various formats: mathematical sequences, basic pictograms, and audio in multiple human languages. "They've seen us," Kim said, surprise evident in her voice. "They're attempting communication." Doe tilted his head, considering the situation briefly. Engaging with them would suggest equality. The hegemony does not negotiate with pre-spacefaring species. "Sir," Kim began, "their message appears peaceful. Perhaps tactical." Doe interrupted. "Target their station. Low-yield particle beam." Lieutenant Rowe hesitated, his mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "Captain, there are life forms aboard. The station poses no threat." "That wasn't a request, Lieutenant. The High Command expects this system to be secured. A demonstration will save time in the long run." Rowe reluctantly complied, targeting the station's center mass. The particle beam lanced out, invisible in the vacuum until it struck the human structure. The station didn't explode dramatically. It simply broke apart, atmosphere venting into space as its modules separated. 43 humans died in that moment, their final transmissions cutting off midward. "Record that we encountered hostile natives," Doe said calmly. "Begin construction of our outpost immediately." The Artaxians didn't bother monitoring Earth's communications afterward. They considered the matter settled. They were wrong. On Earth, the unprovoked attack changed everything. For the first time in human history, every nation received the same terrible news simultaneously. Ancient enemies set aside their differences. Border disputes became meaningless. Religious conflicts paused. In an emergency United Nations session, President Park stood before representatives from every nation, her face grim but determined. Today, we witnessed an act of barbarism that transcends all our earthly divisions, she said, her voice steady despite her grief. The attack on Saturn Station was not just against those 43 brave souls. It was an attack on humanity itself. The room was silent as she continued. Today, we are no longer Korean, American, Nigerian, or Brazilian. We are Terrans, and we will not bow to aggression. We cannot match their technology yet, but we will. We cannot reach them yet, but we will. And when we do, they will learn that humanity's greatest strength has always been our response to those who underestimate us. The vote was unanimous. Within a week, the Terran Defense Coalition was formed, uniting Earth's military, scientific, and industrial capabilities for the first time in human history. In their arrogance, the Artaxians had made a fatal mistake. They had judged humanity by its technology, not its potential. They had provoked humanity into war. And soon, they would wish they hadn't. 100 meters below the Swiss Alps, Director Lee walked through the steel-reinforced corridors of Facility 7. This had once been a particle physics research center. Now it was the heart of humanity's greatest military project. Lee passed through 3 security checkpoints before reaching the main laboratory. The room buzzed with activity as scientists and engineers worked at various stations. All of them had been civilians just 18 months ago. Now they were Earth's best hope for survival. Director, Dr. Song called out, waving from her workstation. Her eyes showed exhaustion, but also excitement. Lee joined her at a large table covered with diagrams and data tablets. Please tell me you have good news. Dr. Song smiled and pushed a tablet across the table. The antimatter containment problem is solved. The new magnetic bottle design works. Lee studied the test results with growing amazement. You're certain? Completely. We can now produce viable warheads at scale. Song pulled up a holographic model showing the internal structure of the weapon. 1 gram of antimatter has the explosive force of 43 megatons, and we can now store up to 5 grams in a single warhead. Lee nodded slowly, taking in the implications. The Artaxians would never expect this level of advancement so quickly. They think in centuries. We think in deadlines, Song said with a hint of pride. And propulsion? Lee asked, moving to the next critical question. Without matching their speed, weapons are useless. Song led Lee to another section of the lab, where a miniature engine sat inside a reinforced test chamber. The hand drive can match Artaxian speeds, she said. What they'd spent millennia perfecting, we've achieved in 18 months. How is that possible? Their approach to faster-than-light travel is elegant but traditional. Our engineers took a completely different path. We don't fold space the way they do. We punch through it. Lee watched as technicians ran a test sequence. The tiny drive core glowed blue, then shifted to violet as energy readings climbed exponentially. It's less efficient, Song admitted, but it works. And we can build them using Earth's existing manufacturing base. Production status. The first 50 drives are already installed on vessels in the Mars shipyards. Admiral Choi reports the Defiance will be ready for its shakedown cruise next week. Lee nodded. I'll inform the Council. This changes everything. Behind Mars, hidden from Earth and Artaxian sensors alike, humanity had transformed its scientific outpost into a warship construction facility. The Red Planet's 2 small moons provided both raw materials and cover for the operation. Admiral Choi floated through the zero-gravity inspection corridor that ran the length of the Defiance's hull. The ship was massive, nearly a kilometer long, yet sleek like a predator. It bore little resemblance to the bulky exploration vessels humans had built before. Beautiful, isn't she? Asked Captain Jin, the ship's designated commander. Beautiful and deadly, Choi replied, running her hand along the polished hull. The metal felt cold but somehow alive beneath her fingers. How are the weapons systems coming along? Railguns are at 95% efficiency. Missile tubes are installed and ready for loading. Point defense grid is operational. Choi nodded with satisfaction. The Defiance was the first of 15 similar vessels nearing completion. Not a large fleet by any standard, but hopefully enough to show the aliens that humanity would not go quietly. "They believe we'll surrender," she told Jin and the other officers floating nearby. "They've never faced humans before." "What makes you so sure they expect surrender?" asked Commander Back, the tactical officer. Choi's expression hardened. "Because that's what every conqueror expects. Submission. Acceptance of the natural order. But there's nothing natural about bowing to bullies, regardless of their technology." A communications officer approached with urgency. "Admiral, we're detecting a massive fold space disruption. Artaxian vessels entering the system." "How many?" "At least 20, ma'am. Larger than the scout we encountered." Choi turned to her officers. "It seems they decided to check on their little outpost. Get back to your ships. All vessels on combat alert." 3 days later, the Artaxian ultimatum arrived at all Earth communications centers simultaneously. The message was brief and arrogant. Earth must acknowledge Artaxian supremacy and accept protectorate status. All military development must cease. Compliance was mandatory. Resistance was futile. The Terran Defense Council met for less than an hour before drafting their response. President Park delivered it personally in a global broadcast. "To the Artaxian hegemony," she began, her voice calm but resolute. "Humanity has received your demands. We have considered them carefully. Our answer is simple." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "No." The transmission ended. In his command center behind Mars, Admiral Choi watched the broadcast with her senior staff. When it ended, she turned to them with fierce determination in her eyes. "Prepare the fleet. Operation First Strike begins at 600. Commander Kang watched through the viewscreen as another explosion ripped through the Titan shipyards, the orbital facility. Humanity's first attempt at building ships beyond Earth's atmosphere was now just burning wreckage. 3 months of work destroyed in minutes by Artaxian plasma weapons. "Damage report," he ordered, keeping his voice steady despite the loss. "Shipyards completely destroyed, sir," Lieutenant Min reported. 57 personnel confirmed lost. Kang nodded grimly. More deaths to avenge. He glanced at the tactical display where 4 massive Artaxian dreadnoughts were closing in on his small squadron of 6 vessels. "They're pursuing exactly as intelligence predicted," said Officer Ham from the sensor station. "Formation is textbook hegemony pursuit pattern." The Artaxian ships moved with perfect precision, their arrowhead formation slicing through space. Each vessel was at least 4 times the size of Kang's destroyers, bristling with weapons that could vaporize a human ship with a single hit. "All ships, this is Commander Kang," he broadcast to his squadron. "Begin retreat to fallback position. Prepare to execute disperse pattern Sigma on my mark." The human vessels accelerated toward Saturn, appearing to flee in disorganized panic. Behind them, the Artaxian dreadnoughts maintained their perfect formation, gaining steadily. Lieutenant Min looked nervous. "Sir, they'll be in firing range in 30 seconds. "Good," Kang replied calmly. "Dispersed pattern Sigma. Now." His 6 vessels suddenly scattered in different directions, like startled fish. To the Artaxian commanders, it looked like a breakdown in human discipline, prey animals running for their lives. The Artaxian fleet responded exactly as Kang had hoped. Following their rigid tactical doctrine, they split their forces, each dreadnought pursuing the single human vessel. Their formation, once perfect, now stretched thin across a wide area of space. "They took the bait," Kang said quietly. He waited until the last possible moment, watching as the Artaxian ships committed fully to their pursuit paths. Then he touched his communication panel. Now, deep within Saturn's rings, where the ice and rock fragments created a natural sensor blind spot, 20 human stealth destroyers had been hiding. Now they powered up and emerged from their concealment, each targeting an Artaxian engine core. "Fire," ordered Captain Su of the stealth destroyer Phantom. Specialized EMP missiles designed specifically for Artaxian technology streaked from the hidden vessels. The Artaxians, focused on their pursuit, detected the new threat too late. The missiles struck their targets with precision, sending electromagnetic pulses through the dreadnought systems. One by one, the massive alien ships lost power. Their engines died first, then weapons systems, then life support. The mighty warships drifted helplessly, caught in Saturn's gravitational field. On his command deck, Kang allowed himself a small smile. Status of Artaxian vessels. All 4 dreadnoughts are powerless, Commander, Min reported. Their emergency systems are online, but weapons and engines are completely disabled. Casualties. Minimal. The EMP weapons caused no physical damage to their ships. Kang nodded with satisfaction. Signal the boarding teams. Tell them to prepare for Phase 2. Executive Officer Ju appeared on the main view screen, already in her boarding armor. Boarding teams ready, Commander. We're approaching the flagship now. Remember the priority targets, Kang reminded her. Command Center, Engineering, and Database cores. We need their technology intact. Understood, sir. The next 12 hours were tense but methodical. Human boarding parties breached each Artaxian dreadnought, encountering stiff but disorganized resistance. The aliens had never expected to defend their ships from internal attackers. Their security protocols were designed to repel other Artaxians, not humans with completely different tactics. By the time Saturn completed 1/4 of its rotation, all 4 dreadnoughts were under human control. The Artaxian crews were secured in their own brig facilities, and human technicians were already downloading the ship's databases. Commander, called Lieutenant Min excitedly. You need to see this. Kang joined him at a console where Artaxian text scrolled rapidly. We've accessed their tactical database, Min explained. It contains the location of every Artaxian military installation in this sector. Fleet movements, supply lines, communication protocols, everything. And their homeworld. Coordinates confirmed, sir, plus detailed scans of their defense systems. Kang stared at the information with a mixture of disbelief and hope. In a single operation, humanity had gone from fighting for survival to having a real chance at victory. Across the vast expanse of the Artaxian hegemony, news of the defeat spread quickly despite official attempts to suppress it. The empire that had conquered 100 species had just lost 4 of its most powerful warships to a pre-spacefaring civilization. In the Artaxian High Command Center, High Commander War slammed his armored fist onto the strategy table, cracking its surface. How? He demanded of his assembled generals. How can primitives defeat our finest vessels? Find their weakness before the Supreme Leader demands our heads. General Tech bowed nervously. The humans do not fight according to any recognized doctrine. High Commander, they hide in debris fields. They retreat, then ambush. They target specific systems rather than attempting to destroy whole vessels. They're savages. Bellowed. Their technology is barely functional. There must be a pattern to exploit. But as the Artaxian analysts studied the Battle of Titan, they came to a disturbing conclusion. The humans had no fixed patterns to predict. Where Artaxian military doctrine had been refined over thousands of years into perfect, optimal strategies, humans improvised constantly, changing tactics with each engagement. And that made them the most dangerous enemy the hegemony had ever faced. The Terran vessel Hope emerged from fold space in a flash of blue light. The sleek warship, once a captured Artaxian dreadnought, but now rebuilt with human innovations, stabilized its position near the edge of the Rigel system. Captain Ba stood on the command deck, her hands clasped behind her back, as she studied the tactical display. The Rigel colony spread across the third planet's northern continent, mining facilities, processing plants, and barracks for workers. Sensor readings showed minimal Artaxian military presence, 1 frigate in orbit and a small garrison on the surface. Life sign analysis complete, Captain, reported Science Officer Han. Approximately 12,000 Nexari in the labor camps. Only 300 Artaxians. Bai nodded. The Nexari were one of dozens of species conquered by the hegemony. According to the intelligence they'd gathered, the blue-skinned beings had once been accomplished astronomers and mathematicians before the Artaxians reduced them to mining ore. Artaxian defenses? Bai asked. Standard pattern, replied Lieutenant Yoon. Orbital cannon emplacement, shield generators around the main compound, and patrol drones. Nothing we haven't seen before. And they've detected us. Yes, Captain. They're scrambling fighters now. Bai allowed herself a small smile. Good. Let them prepare for a traditional assault. She touched her communication panel. All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for liberation operation. Tactical Officer Moon, deploy ACUs. Moon's fingers danced across his control station. Autonomous combat units prepped and ready, Captain. Deployment pods loaded. On the lower decks of the Hope, 500 metal spheres the size of basketballs hummed to life. Each contained a combat AI system developed from the same technology that had revolutionized Earth's defense networks. Launch, ordered by. The pods shot from the Hope toward the planet below. Artaxian defense systems immediately targeted them, but the small objects were difficult to track. Some were destroyed in flight, but most penetrated the atmosphere. The Artaxian garrison commander watched the approaching objects on his scanner. Prepare for ground assault, he ordered his troops. Standard defensive formation. These humans are predictable. But when the pods landed, they didn't open to release human soldiers. Instead, each sphere unfolded into a different configuration. Some became flying drones, others spider-like ground units, others burrowing machines that disappeared underground. What are these things? An Artaxian soldier shouted as a flying unit evaded his plasma rifle shot, then reconfigured in midair to return fire. The ACUs had no fixed form or programmed tactics. They analyzed Artaxian responses in real time and adapted instantly. When the aliens established shield walls, the units transformed into burrowing configurations. When the Artaxians switched to area effect weapons, the units scattered and became smaller, faster targets. From orbit, Captain Ba watched the operation unfold. Shield generators neutralized, reported Moon. Main compound security grid disabled. Send in the Marine teams, Bai ordered. Minimal casualties. Remember, we want the Artaxians alive. 3 hours after their arrival, the Hope's crew controlled the entire colony. The Artaxian garrison had surrendered after finding themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Not a single mining facility had been damaged, and the Nexari workers were unharmed. Captain Ba walked through the main administrative building, now secured by human Marines. The Nexari had been gathered in the central plaza, confused and fearful after generations of Artaxian rule. Their leader, identified as Trill, approached Ba cautiously. His tall, slender frame towered over the human, but his posture was submissive, the stance of someone who expected punishment. "Are you our new masters?" he asked in halting Artaxian language. Ba shook her head. "We come as friends," she replied, her translator converting her words. "The hegemony no longer controls this sector." Trill's 4 eyes blinked in disbelief. "Friends? The concept is unfamiliar. But one worth learning," Ba said gently. "Your people are free to determine their own future. We offer alliance, not domination." As Trill processed this information, similar scenes played out across 12 star systems. The Terran fleet, now numbering over 100 vessels, systematically liberated hegemony outposts and colonies. Each freed species was offered membership in the newly formed Stellar Concordat, an alliance of equals rather than the hierarchy the Artaxians had imposed. The Morax, with their unparalleled skill in medicine, joined willingly. The Vril, expert navigators, followed soon after. Within months, the Concordat included 17 species, each contributing unique abilities and knowledge. In the Grand Palace on Artax Prime, Supreme Leader Vex faced his council in the Chamber of Eternal Wisdom. The massive circular room had witnessed 8,000 years of expansion and conquest. Never before had it been the site of discussions about retreat. These humans must be stopped. Vex thundered, his ceremonial armor clattering as he pounded the ancient stone table. They defile the natural order. They turn our subject species against us. General Lox, commander of the home fleet, stepped forward reluctantly. Supreme Leader, we have lost contact with the Rigel, Deneb, and Procyon sectors. Our forces are in disarray. How? Demanded Vex. How can a species that could barely reach its own moon 5 years ago now threaten the eternal hegemony? Science Counselor Mur spoke softly. They do not think as we do. Supreme Leader, when we conquered other worlds, we imposed our ways upon them. The humans, they adapt. They take our technology and improve it in ways we never considered. They learn from every species they encounter. And worse, added General Lox, they offer freedom rather than servitude. Our subject races flock to their banner willingly. Vex stared at his council in disbelief. Are you suggesting we cannot defeat them? The silence that followed was answer enough. For the first time in 8,000 years, the hegemony was retreating, and no one knew how to stop it. The enormous space station hung in orbit around Alpha Centauri's largest gas giant, rotating slowly against the backdrop of stars. Inside, the grand conference chamber had been designed specifically for this historic meeting. The circular room featured a massive round table with representatives from 27 species seated around its perimeter. General Nam of Earth sat with perfect posture, flanked by Admiral Choi and Ambassador Wu. Across from them, Supreme Leader Vex of the Artaxian hegemony wore his ceremonial battle armor, its once gleaming surface now dulled from actual combat. 6 Artaxian high commanders accompanied him, their mandibles clicking nervously. Representatives from liberated worlds filled the remaining seats: the mathematical Nexari, the crystalline Vril, the gaseous Morax, and many others. Species that had been enemies under Artaxian rule now sat side by side as equals. This conference will now begin, announced the neutral mediator, a member of the ancient Thorn species who had avoided the conflicts. Supreme Leader Vex stood first, his armored limbs clanking as he moved. The hegemony acknowledges the current military situation. He began, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard language. We are prepared to discuss temporary borders while this misunderstanding is resolved. General Nam smiled slightly. There is no misunderstanding, Supreme Leader. Your empire tried to conquer us. You failed. Now you face extinction, unless you accept our terms. Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly in anger. The hegemony has stood for 8,000 years. You speak of extinction. We have destroyed entire civilizations for less insolence. Nam remained perfectly calm. You destroyed one station, he said quietly. We could have destroyed your homeworld. Remember that as we discussed terms. The chamber fell silent. Everyone present knew it was true. 3 weeks earlier, a Terran battle group had bypassed the Artaxian defense fleet and positioned itself above Artax Prime. They had departed without firing a shot, a demonstration more powerful than any attack could have been. The terms are simple, Nam continued. The hegemony, as a political entity, will be dissolved. All conquered worlds will be granted independence. Your military will be reduced to defensive capabilities only. Your people will live and govern themselves on their homeworld and existing colonies, but the days of Artaxian expansion are over. Vex hissed, a sound his translator didn't attempt to convert. And if we refuse? Ambassador Wu spoke for the first time. Then each species you have wronged will seek its own justice. The humans will not protect you from that. For 3 tense days, the negotiations continued. The Artaxians argued, threatened, and finally bargained. But their position was hopeless, and eventually Vex accepted reality. On the 4th day, he pressed his seal into the document that would be known as the Artaxian capitulation. May your victory bring you the same joy that conquest once brought us, he said bitterly to Nam as they completed the ceremony. Nam shook his head. That's where you still don't understand. We never wanted conquest. We wanted survival, then justice, and now peace. Your civilization exists today because we chose mercy over vengeance. Remember that. Supreme Leader. The signing ceremony was broadcast across thousands of worlds. On Earth, people gathered in streets and parks to watch screens showing the moment that humanity secured its place among the stars. President Park addressed a cheering crowd in Seoul. Today marks not the end of a war, but the beginning of a new era. The Stellar Concordat will unite species across our sector in peaceful cooperation rather than domination. We have learned that diversity brings strength, not weakness. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed rapidly. The Concordat established its headquarters on a purpose-built space station named Unity. Trade routes opened between formerly isolated worlds. Cultural exchanges flourished as species that had been kept separate under Artaxian rule discovered each other. The Artaxians themselves gradually adapted to their new role. No longer conquerors, they found other ways to contribute. Their engineering skills proved valuable in peaceful applications, and their once feared military academics became centers for theoretical physics research. 5 years after the peace conference, historian Yen of the Terran Diplomatic Corps published what would become the definitive account of the conflict. The massive work, translated into 29 languages, detailed humanity's journey from isolated planet to galactic power. In his private office on Unity Station, General Nam, now retired and serving as an advisor to the Concordat Council, read the final paragraph of Yen's book. The Artaxians fail to understand a fundamental truth about humans. We are defined not by our technology but by our adaptability. When faced with extinction, humanity doesn't surrender, it evolves. They provoked us into war, believing us weak. Their civilization now exists because we showed them mercy they never would have. Perhaps that, more than our weapons, proves which species was truly advanced. Nam closed the book and looked out his viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the known regions, other civilizations waited. Some would be friends, others enemies. But humanity was ready for either. They had been provoked into war once. Those who came after would be wise to learn from the Artaxians' mistake. The end.